Hey folks, this is Pete Perry, Papa Ukraine on Instagram, and I've gotten a few questions recently about what gear I use, how I use it, and just why I made the choices that I did. So I figured I'd make a quick video today showing you through my most basic gear and kind of the setup that's gotten me most of the photos that I've been really proud of. So to start off, I'm going to show you my Fujifilm Gw692. This camera is absolutely my baby, and if you've seen any of my work, odds are it's been off this one. It's a 6x9 medium format rangefinder. I like it a lot because it's a super simple camera to use. There's not many moving parts or buttons or features, and there's really not too much that can go wrong. There's a shutter lock, which is an interesting feature. That's to prevent you from firing you don't want to. Because this camera only gets 8 shots to a roll on a medium format roll, you really want to preserve every shot you get and make sure that you're actually taking what you want to and not either accidentally firing it by hitting it or accidentally firing it too soon when you're not ready. There's 2 shutter buttons. I personally like this grip shutter a lot because it allows me a few different angles to shoot from that I wouldn't normally have with a camera, especially when I'm at concerts or events. There's not a lot of room to move around in the crowd, and there's not really a lot of room to get in the way of people without being a nuisance. So this just kind of gives me a couple options as far as putting it up, shooting it, pulling it back down, or really just kind of doing whatever I need to quickly get a shot and then pull back and not really be in people's way again. There's a hot shoe and the flash mount. That's actually why I chose the Gw692 over the other ones in the series. There was the G690s that came out in the late 60s and early 70s, up through the Gw693, which is a newer version of this camera. I chose this one frankly because it had the hot shoe. It was a fixed lens, which is a little bit sharper in this series, and frankly this just was the one that I liked the best in terms of looks. It also has a X mount that allows you to either use the flash directly mounted right here, or to pull the flash off, attach the cable to here and the flash, and then use both ambidextrously. That's another place that this grip shutter comes in really handy. You're able to use the camera one-handed despite the fact that it's so large, and I have really giant hands so it fits me pretty well, but it just again allows you some options to hold the camera in different ways. As I've said, it's a rangefinder camera. That means that these 3 windows here control most of the focus instead of a large prism where you're looking directly through the lens. Instead, these are synced up to the focus ring on the lens itself, so you're not looking directly through it. And I actually prefer that. It makes the cameras lighter, more reliable, and just they have less moving parts in them, so there's less to go wrong. You don't have to worry about mirror issues or prism issues or any of those things locking up because it's 2 entirely independent systems that both have less moving parts altogether. This lens is a 90mm. I like it because it's a little bit wider than a 50 would be in a 35mm equivalent. This is about a 40. I like it because you're able to capture more, especially on a stage or something like that, without having to sacrifice really bad lens distortion like you would have in a wider lens. There's a built-in lens hood too, which I find convenient because not only is it a lens hood, it also protects your settings. So if you want to set something, you can pull that back, and then those settings are locked in and won't be changed, and really can't be changed unless you're ready to pull it back out. If we open the back here, you can see how large an area 6x9 actually is. It's close to about 6x9 centimeters, which is really nice because it gives you almost an unlimited amount of detail to work with in post. When you've actually scanned the photo in, have it in Photoshop or whatever system you use, you can punch in as much as you want, you can crop, you can reframe, you can move the levels around as much as you'd like to, and you're really just not going to show much degradation of quality. That's an issue I've had with 35mm in the past. 6x9 is just a way larger format, so you have much more detail to work with as opposed to 35, where you really run into issues with both grain detail and then actual level control, or at least I have it. To put it in context, 6x9 is 2 6x4.5 negatives put together, and a 6x4.5 negative is about 4 35mm negatives put together. It's not exact, but that's a decent rule of thumb to go by. I've actually taken a 6x9 shot off of this camera, cut it down the middle, and then used it as 2 separate 6x4.5 photos, and no one's ever called me out on it, no one's ever noticed, because there's just so much detail packed into those negatives. One drawback to having shots that large is they do take a lot of file space. I find that a 6x9 photo will generally take about a gig of file space at 3200 DPI. Frankly, 3200 DPI is kind of overkill for a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, but I like to have it in there just so in the event that I need to punch into it later or I need to come back to it and change something, I'll have, again, mostly unlimited detail to come back and be able to do that with. Next up is Ilford Microphen. This has kind of been my secret weapon developer for a long time now. Before this, I used a lot of DF96, which I liked a lot, and is a really, really great developer for anyone who's a beginner. It's a simple 3-minute mono bath. You pour it in, wait 3 or 4 minutes, depending on how old it is, pour it back out into the container, rinse some water through it, hang it up to dry, and it's ready to scan or print. So it's great in terms of convenience, but in terms of detail, you tend to lose a lot in the lows and the highs. That's one of the reasons I prefer this. Kind of the approach with this is preserving as much detail in both the lows and the highs. So it won't clip your highs, it won't clip your lows, and it gives you the maximum amount of detail for a scannable image. So the blacks aren't really black, they're a very dark gray. The whites aren't really white, they're a very, very, very off-white. This developer won't really bake in a look so much as it'll give you a jumping off point for other looks. It's very, very, very similar to Rec. 709 if you've ever worked with video. The idea behind that is a video you can apply LUTs or a color correction to. This is a super similar approach. They're kind of just giving you a point where you can take that photo and then make it into what you want instead of having exactly what you want or what you don't want baked in right in the actual negative itself. Next up is Ilford Rapid Fixer. Personally, I've never noticed a huge difference between different fixers. I find the developer tends to have more control over the image than the fixer does. But this was the one that was recommended to use with Microphen, and I've really never had a problem with it. It works really quickly, it works really well, and it holds up pretty well. So I don't really see a reason to change that anytime soon. And I've really had, good results from the combination of these two. And then finally, I use shooting a lot of Ilford Delta 3200. It's a really, really nice high-speed film. Gives you relatively small grains. Obviously not as small as something in like a Pan 50, but still very, very usable small grains that give you a lot of detail. It's a box speed 1600 film, but it's encouraged to push to 3200, hence the name, and I've pushed it even beyond that to 6400 and had super usable results. So that's something I highly recommend for anyone trying to do concert photography or who works frequently in low light scenarios. Even for some flash photography, I find that it's a really useful tool because you can really control the light and kind of cut back as much as you'd like to, which is kind of the opposite of the problem I normally have with film. Usually I'm trying to get as much extra light as I possibly can, whereas this is something that captures enough that I can kind of cut back and have a few extra options in terms of what f-stops and shutter speeds and even locations I can choose in terms of shooting film and in terms of actually capturing a usable image, not something that I'm going to have that I can't do anything with later on. And then in terms of just my approach in general, as you can kind of tell from my choices, it's really just a matter of getting as much detail possible into the negative and then preserving that in the negative, using that in a scanner, and then editing whatever way I want to later on. So I really want to have as many options as I possibly can to go with. I want to kind of limit myself in terms of what kind of fancier features I have, and then just use that focus on getting A, the shot that I want to, and B, just having a usable shot, because a lot of these variables are very outside of my control in concert photography. You don't know what the lighting setup's going to be like. You don't know if there's even going to be a lighting guy. They might just flick some lights on and go from there. You don't really know what the crowd's going to be like, if it's going to be packed or empty, what spots you're going to be able to get in the actual crowd itself. You kind of just have to move where there's availability in the crowd, so where they can put you. You don't really want to be getting in people's way. You don't want to be sticking cameras in people's faces. You don't want to be shooting flashes right next to their eyes. So you're kind of limited in the actual moment of taking the photo. So I want to be unlimited in the moment of editing the photo, or at least as little limitation as I possibly can have on me when it actually comes time to cut the photo up, edit it, and export it out for typically Instagram or occasionally print. If you're a beginner, make sure you like and subscribe. I'm going to have some really basic videos coming up, how to meter, how to develop, how to do really basic film photography techniques. And if you're advanced, make sure you like and subscribe as well. I'll have some more difficult stuff coming up in terms of pushing and pulling, in terms of how to actually do concert photography in and of itself. And thanks for watching.